Good evening, my friends. This is the Grimflayer. I hope you're all doing very well tonight. More Golgari gameplay, and we are on the draw. Our opponent has kept 7, and we are thinking about whether to keep our 7. So, it's a blind game 1. We've got the platonic ideal of 3 lands versus 4 spells, and our 4 spells are even perfectly balanced between 2 pieces of interaction and 2 threats. So, kind of in a structural sense, our hand is perfect. But when we move away from the broad structure and into the specifics, our hand is actually about as bad as it can be, considering the kind of perfect structure. So I'll explain briefly why. We have our 3 lands, which we pack a lot of utility, but of course the big glaring issue is that we only have one source that produces colored mana. And of course we need access to both, and ideally we want double black by turn 3 as well. Compounding the issue is that our one colored source is going to require what looks like Affection a Shock on turn 1, which, as I've said before, does not happen very often in this deck, and especially alongside a Thoughtseize. So right now we're in for a 5-point life swing on turn 1, which is something this deck almost never has to pay. So that's very bad. And our other piece of interaction is certainly one that is more late game oriented in general. There are matchups where it's like a strictly better Abrupt Decay because they only play 1 basic and they have it in their opening hand, stuff like that. But generally, of course, this is more of this shines in the late game when ramping them does not hurt us much. And then on top of that, we have both of our threats are kind of 2 of the late game ones. Like, we don't have anything to play out on turn 2. So definitely a hand that's kind of a mess. The structure is perfect, the specifics are a mess, but it's still definitely a keep. In a blind game 1, we could mull to a totally non-functional 6. So this is good. It's just going to be not very smooth sailing, potentially. That said, our top deck could treat us kindly here, you never know. Our opponent will lead off by fetching a Scalding Tarn, Watery Grave into Serum Visions. Okay, so this is some kind of blue-black, controller combo deck. That's what we can derive from it at the moment. Scalding Tarn might signal red as well, or it might just be a blue fetch that the opponent happens to own. So we draw another Thoughtseize. I'm not as worried anymore about our life total. It's still going to be very painful here, but my incentives to Thoughtseize and shock aggressively have gone up here. Because, again, we're reading this as control or combo. And it looks like we are against Grixis control. So Grixis control is one of these archetypes that's actually kind of a correlate to Sultai Midrange, in my opinion. And the reason those two are kind of there's a strong parallel between them is they both are 3-color, fair interactive decks that look immensely powerful on paper, right? It's like, holy moly. Sultai gives you all of the great green-black stuff, plus Snapcaster Mage, Jace the Mind Sculptor, Ancestral Visions if you want it, Counter Magic if you want it. That's just looks so good on paper, and kind of the same thing applies to Grixis control. It's like it gives you all of the blue-red stuff, the cryptic commands, the cantrips, the Jaces, the burn spells, but it also gives you access to black, so you can play Liliana's and Terminates and Kolagin's commands. So on paper, it is a collection of some of the most powerful cards in Modern, but in practice, it can be a little bit clunky and a little bit painful to get access to all 3 colors and the amounts you need them. We see our opponent needs black-red on turn 2, double black on turn 3, and triple blue on turn 4. That's not easily accomplished. And right now they're only on 2 lands altogether. So what do we do here? Well, these Terminates actually are pretty rough against us. They're a nice clean answer to Tasigur and Tracker. But that's more of a late game thing. I kind of want to slow them down earlier. And I also want to take the stuff that's going to be really tough for us to deal with. So The Terminates will deal with our things, but what can we not deal with, right? So I think we have to leave the Terminates, especially because there's two, so there's a redundancy there. So we can take Liliana or Cryptic Command, and my first inclination was to take one of those. But they don't have the third mana, or even the fourth mana for sure yet. We have another Thoughtseize next turn. So I think I actually have to take the Jace Vryn's Prodigy, and that feels... There's something that feels a little bit wrong about that, because we're a deck that's packed full of removal. We might draw removal soon and not have any great targets for it, but I think we're supposed to just take that. We cannot even Assassin's Trophy it, even if we wanted to with our current hand. So as weird as that feels, and as much as with a bunch of other progressions we would happily let them play the Jace next turn and then just push it or decay it, we do not have that option with our hand as it stands, so I think we have to take the Jace there. Our opponent will play out the Steam Vents painlessly, and we draw a Scavenging Ooze. Alright, well, that's another threat, which makes it so we're a little bit likelier to start grinding through all of these Terminates, but I still don't want to risk them playing this Liliana on turn 3. So I feel obligated to Thoughtseize here. They found a Kolagan's Command, so see, this is what I mean. They, look how clunky this hand looks compared to their land base, but look how powerful all the cards are. It's just a bunch of really powerful stuff. There's no denying that. And I think Liliana's the correct take there. I always feel bad leaving a Cryptic Command in the opponent's hand when I have the chance to Thoughtseize it away. But they're far enough away from that I think we have to take the Lily. The worst thing that can happen to us is they go land into Lily, and then they're terminating away our threats as we play them one by one. That would be very bad. They top deck a Grim Lavamancer. Okay. Another very powerful card. We top deck a third Field of Ruin. Man, these are pretty brutal, but you know what? At least we get to have a really mana-efficient turn, right? We don't mind delving this stuff away. Those aren't... We're not going to get to activate the Tasigur. They're going to terminate them. That's fine. Those things are not good food for the Skoos. They don't, it's obviously fine to delve away there just to have a nice mana-efficient turn. And yep, we're going to trade with a Terminate. We've got to do it sooner or later. Now, they have found a Swamp, which means their Kolagan's Command is live. But they still, their fourth land needs to be blue if they are going to cast Cryptic when they hit the fourth land. And we draw a Collective Brutality, so that's actually a pretty good draw. So what are our options here? We can play Scavenging Ooze, which seems really bad because we will not have any activations out of it. It will die to the Lavamancer. We cannot even Assassin's Trophy unless we Field of Ruin first, and that also seems pretty bad. Tireless Tracker into Field of Ruin is actually a reasonable play, just because it's going to give us a clue and all that good stuff, but then they get to kill it cleanly with Lava Man. I don't like that either. So I think I have to Brutality this Lava Man, and I think I should also definitely escalate for the discard mode, because they have 3 very desirable takes in hand. So I think that is the clear play here. And what do we pitch? It's just going to be this Assassin's Trophy. Like, they're showing us a lot of really powerful stuff on the stack. There are obviously some good permanents in their deck. They've showed us Lava Man, Lily, Jace. But Trophy's the pitch there because, number 1, it's awkward with our current lands. Number 2, we don't want to give them another land for sure. And number 3, we just rate our threats more highly here. So we know what they have, and we're going to take away the Kolagan's Command, once again leaving the Cryptic in hand, but the K Command is live next turn, and that's a really nice 2-for-1. We don't want to let them have it, and we're pretty happy here to not play the field. Doesn't accomplish that much to play it. We'd rather hang on to it and get Tracker a clue. But they're going to Thoughtseize, and they take away the Skoos. So they top deck a Thoughtseize, they take the Skoos. Interesting. So I don't know, maybe they're just not respecting the Tracker that much, or what, but I think I would have expected them to take the Tracker given how few green sources we have, and therefore how anemic the Skoos could be. But anyway, we draw another land, so we're pretty happy to just play this Tracker and play out a land. I chose to run out the Overgrown Tomb there, even though it doesn't conceal information as well as playing Field of Ruin would, because look at our life total. It's all of a sudden at 12, even though the opponent hasn't damaged us, right? Yeah, we fetch, shocked, thought seize twice. Definitely at the point where we need to start respecting our life total, so I'll just run out that. And also, if we draw, you know, another colored source next turn and we crack a clue, having access to more colors could be relevant. So our opponent does not terminate in the end step. Interesting. They play an island. They have, So man, I really think they should have just terminated this thing. Once again, I don't think they're respecting the tireless tracker quite enough, because if they had terminated, of course, then they, in the end step, then they get to get untap, draw their island, and then perfect, play the island, hold up cryptic command. But I think here they wanted to just say, well, let's see what we draw. I'm assuming they have, you know, stuff like Lightning Bolt in this deck, so maybe they were hoping they could draw a card like Lightning Bolt to kill the tracker cleanly without having to spend their terminate, because they know that Bolt doesn't line up well against our other threats like Taziger or Tarmogoyf. So that is my assumption. That said, our opponent's kind of punished for it here, because we have another land in hand, we get to make a clue. And now we get to just start going off with a tracker. And we draw another land. Alright. So we're going to attack. Yeah, now our opponent kind of has to terminate, because this is just a 4-3 attacking them, and they've got to deal with it anyway, so they kind of have to do it now. Here, I could crack a clue in response, but I would actually rather Field of Ruin. This is still not going to give them Cryptic Command mana for this turn, so that's not a worry. But what it will do is get me another clue while Terminate's on the stack, so our opponent is even more punished for not just terminating this thing in my end step. And we also, yeah, so we got to see if they were able to stay on red, and it doesn't look like they're able to stay on red, so they go get a swamp off Field of Ruin, so that's another win for us here. Playing against control, as you might have seen lately, I've been playing against a lot of control. Two of my most recent videos are against blue-white. Again, not an intentional thing, they're just kind of some of the more interesting matches I've been having. So these matches against control, they're all about the little victories, right? Like, either player can just top deck the right bombs at the right times and win, and the other one can't do much about it. But if it's a closer game than that, the player that's going to win is most often the one that wins all of the little battles like that, or more of the little battles, I should say. And we just won a couple little battles using the tireless tracker. And we even get to get a swamp and hold up Fatal Push, in case that matters. They have showed us pushable stuff, but opponent will not play to the board. They're going to pass holding up Cryptic Command. We draw another tireless tracker, so that's a good one, but of course that's just going to get cryptic. So I think what we want to do is do a little digging first with at least one clue. See what we find, Liliana of the Veil. Alright, so that's a great one. And this means we're going to have a really nice double spell opportunity next turn, where we can lead on one of them, draw out the Cryptic Command, and then resolve the other, in theory. So for that reason, I'm actually going to play the Blooming Marsh here, because having more lands untapped next turn is obviously what I need to pull that off. And for that reason, right now it looks like I'm going to lead on the tracker as bait and then try to slam the Lily. So they find another swamp, and they play it. They're going to pass Cryptic and one unknown in hand. Alright, so on the end step I could field them, or I could go get a clue. But here I'm wondering, well, you know, maybe they for some reason want a double black, and they have another mountain in their deck. Or they do have a mountain in their deck to go get. So I almost don't want to field them. I almost want to just crack a clue instead, because I don't want to take the chance of fixing their mana. That is still a thing. And also, if my tracker does resolve, like if they don't take the bait, then having these fields around is going to be pretty useful for that. So, Collective Brutality is a draw. Okay, we draw a forest, so if even if we lead off with playing a land, we're going to be on 7 mana, which does not allow us to spot check and clear the way with Collective Brutality and still have a double spell turn. So, as good as that would be, I think I still like just leading on the Tireless Tracker here. Once again, good if it resolves, good if it gets Cryptic, right? Like, there's no bad outcome here. So they're going to counter draw, sure. I don't think they can afford to let that resolve. I think that's a fine play. But now we get to get this Lily down. And we're going to tick up and just pitch this Forest. You know, Fatal Push was the other option to pitch. That might have been fine too, but we've got more than enough lands. We've already seen 2 trackers. It's not like we're that likely to see another one. Opponent will pitch a Logic Knot. Alright, so they have 1 unknown in hand. And they will draw. They find a Steam Vent, so they're back on red. They have to shock for it, though. Nico Bolas the Ravager. Okay, so 4/4 flying for 4. ETB makes us discard a card. And then for 7 mana, he gets exiled and a return transformed, only at sorcery speed. And then he's just a very, very powerful planeswalker. Duly noted. Okay, so that's fine. We picked the Fatal Push there, even though Fatal Push answers Bolas, because they're empty-handed. We'd rather just Edict with the Liliana and keep our cards in hand for now. So Edict with the Lily feels fine there, and Scavenging Ooze is a great draw. Great draw here. It allows us to deploy a threat that also disrupts some of what must be their better draws, like Kolagan's Command and Snapcaster Mage and things like that. There was also an argument for, on my turn, eating 2 creatures just to become a 4/4 and get out of burn spell range, but I think I'm more afraid of them going Snapcaster into some really high value play than I am of them just bolting my Ooze. Bolting my Ooze is bad, but that's just a 1-for-1. So, but they didn't draw a bolt; they drew a Thoughtseize. So sure, there goes our Brutality. That is, you know, a card we would have liked to have, but that's obviously fine with me. Now on the end step, we're going to actually Field of Ruin, take them back off of red. This lets us go get a Forest. We still have just as many green sources, and aha, see, I knew they might have had a mountain. I guess they just got a second swamp there the first time we let them search, because they have some Lilianas to draw to, I suppose. But we're going to go ahead and eat the Bolas and the Jace. Now we're a 4/4, now we're up out of bolt range, and it's just time to get huge. So, player fetch land, tick the Lily up, field the Watery Grave, just trying to take them off double blue. Alright, they have 3 islands in the deck, good to know. Excuse me, trying to take them off triple blue, and yeah, 3 islands, so we'll eat the Lava Man. We'll eat our own Skoos, because that is kind of the worst thing to buy back, since we already have another. If we draw Lily the Last Hope, we'd rather buy back Tracker or Taziger. And here we will hold up an Overgrown Tomb instead of eating one more thing, just to be able to blank the opponent's Snapcasters and other graveyard-based draws. And because that also puts us in the realm of a 1-turn clock anyway. Like 6/6 is big enough to force our opponent to scoop. I don't know what they could have really had to get out of that, with Snapcaster targets being shut off and Liliana still on board. I don't think they had a way out of it there. So anyway, or at least not a way that deals with our board right then and there. So anyway, yeah, pretty cool game. We had a really clunky opening hand. Remember the Fetch, Shock, Thoughtseize. We had 3 Fields of Ruin as our 3 follow-up lands, but we started taking that Jace with our first Thoughtseize ended up being really relevant. That thing looting them into a more smooth progression and then transforming would have been very bad for us. So taking the Jace, taking the Lily, those proved to be the right calls. And then we were able to get the Kolagin's command out of their hand as well. We, kind of traded off using our mana efficiently with the Terminates. And then Tireless Tracker bridged us through the mid-game with some nice clue action, and then let us get to this end state where we're kind of taking over the game with a Liliana and a Scavenging Ooze. These two cards worked in tandem and just kind of closed out the game in a pretty clean fashion once we got our feet underneath us. So a little bit of a clunky progression from both sides with a lot of powerful cards flying around on both sides. That's kind of how these matchups can go sometimes. So speaking of how the matchup can go, let's take a quick look at the sideboard and see how we want to kit out against Grixis control. Alright everybody, we are here siding against Grixis control. Now by now, if you are a follower of the channel, and if you aren't, I would encourage you to be. Feel free, if you're enjoying the content, to hit the subscribe button. That would mean a lot to me. I'd really appreciate that. So in any case, if you've been following my videos, you've seen me sideboard by now against blue-white control. And while the principles here should be similar, they should not be identical, and here's why. So we just need a little bit more grave hate against Grixis than we do against blue-white or Jeskai, because blue-white and Jeskai play Snapcaster Mage and Search for Iskanta, maybe about 2 of each on average, and not, sometimes Snapcasters can be in a little higher count than that as well, but, probably not too much more than that. But Grixis control, we have up to 4 Kolagin's command. I don't think that's stock or anything, but, 2 or 3 is probably stock. I've seen Grixis control decks with a full 4 Kolagin's command, with a full 4 Snapcaster Mage. We've seen Jace Vryn's Prodigy, Grim Lavamancer. These things all care about the graveyard. It's not beyond the realm of possibility that they play some Del threats like a Tasigur or even a Gurmag Angler, stuff like that. And then who knows what else. So we want to be a little bit heavier on the grave hate here. We also want to be a little bit heavier on the spot removal than we are against the blue-white X control decks, because of course they're showing us Jace, Grim Lavamancers, and then some of the usual suspects like Planeswalkers and Snapcaster Mage. They showed us Nicol Bolas, which is a pushable creature. So we want to retain access to a little bit more spot removal than we would against a blue-white control deck. So that means we have to kind of pare down what we would bring in. So against blue-white control, our sideboarding would probably look something like this. These cards are all coming in, and that's pretty solid. This might be a maybe board card, something like this. You cut the 4 Fatal Pushes, you cut a land, you trim around the edges of a couple other things, and you're pretty much good to go. But here, we definitely want the Maelstrom Pulse. Like, that's it for sure. Again, they just present more permanents, and permanents are coming down earlier as well, so that's definitely a thing. So what can, and of course we don't get to take out quite as many cards as we do against blue-white control. So there's that. We also, I think we need a second Nile Spellbomb here. And even stuff like, Languish is actually potentially reasonable against them. A lot of the stuff is pretty reasonable, but I don't think we want to go that deep. Like, we already have to probably decline to bring in some better cards. So the Spellbombs, I think, are must-haves. As a 2 of. You could even play the 3rd, but I kind of like 2 here. I think Choke and Nissa are just simply too good against blue-based control decks not to play. So those are must-haves. Maelstrom Pulse is a must-have as well, in my opinion, for this matchup. So we might need to not bring in quite as much hand disruption as usual. So it's going to be between these 2. I think we might have room for one of the 2, and there's arguments for both. Duress is really nice, and normally against, most blue-based control decks, I rate it higher than Brutality because it can take away Planeswalkers. Now, that is very relevant here, but Brutality, of course, is also relevant. It kills these things like Lavamancer and Jace Vryn's Prodigy, while also being able to take an instant or sorcery out the hand, of which they have a plethora. So as much as both of these would be nice, we might only be able to bring in one. And since we're already potentially not bringing in one of these really good cards, I simply don't think we have room for Fulminator Mage in this matchup. This is usually a really nice card in control matchups, and it still would be nice here in theory, but I just don't think we have the room. And, you know, as good as it would be to hit some dual lands and maybe strand some of their cards like double black or triple blue casting costs in hand, I just simply don't think we have the slots here. So we're going to do a lot of the same things in terms of what comes out. We can cut a land. That'll almost always be a Blooming Marsh when we do cut a land. And we can cut most of our Fatal Pushes. They have just showed me so many pushable creatures there that I want access to at least one. And then, so what else don't we like? Well, our discard is all still really fine. I guess I still like Inquisition and Thoughtseize better than Duress and Brutality overall because, you know, taking Snapcaster is live that these things can't hit. Of course, Thoughtseize is just going to take care of Bolas, of Cryptic, of Snap, you know, Planeswalkers, whatever. So I think all those are still even better than our alternative options. Brutality, obviously, is good here. Scavenging Ooze closed out the game for us pretty well, and we do want some Grave Hate, but it's one of the few things that dies, you know, if we play it on curve to a lot of what they have. They might have Brutalities. They might have Lightning Bolts. They do have Lavamancers. They do have Kolagan's Command. A lot of things that do 2 or 3 damage. So the Skoos just might be a tad fragile. So how does it look if we just trim 1? Well, we haven't gone down on threats because we brought in Anissa, so our balance is good, which is where we want it to be. Tarmogoyf, Tireless Tracker, Taziger, these are all definitely better, in my opinion, than Ooze in the matchup. At least the third Ooze, right? Because Ooze is clunky in multiples. We still want to see them, but just one, and at the right time. Abrupt Decay, yeah, they've showed me enough stuff that I can hit with this. They might play Search for Azcanta, but Liliana's, Lavamancers, Jace, you name it. And of course, Assassin's Trophy is a nice out to some higher curve stuff, as well as all the things I just mentioned. Both Lilianas are going to be spectacular here, definitely not touching those. And Pulse is good enough that we already brought in another one, so what do we do here? I really want to play a Duress, but it's kind of tough to make a cut, so it's, I'm pretty confident in saying that this is my 61, but I honestly don't know what the single best card to cut here is. These are the types of reasons why I usually only play one Spellbomb against control decks, because the slots just get really, really tight. So anyway, if you have any opinions on this, let me know what the final cut should be. It's really hard to say here. Maybe play draw changes it, all that good stuff. But anyway, our 61 should be something like that, and it's really tough for me to settle on what the final card should be. So anyway, you know, if you're in doubt, just pick something and submit it, or you can do the extremely blasphemous thing and submit 61 cards, which obviously is not kosher and all that bad stuff. But we, you know, we're kind of at a loss. I simply can't make this decision. Maybe it should just only be one Maelstrom Pulse. All right, let's settle on that. I'll leave this over here for everyone's consideration, or maybe it should just be a Fatal Push coming out. Regardless, looking something like that, this last card is really tough to decide on, but it probably does not matter all that much. So anyway, game 2 it is. Let's see how we do with our slightly indecisive 60. Alright, everybody. Game 2 against Grixis Control, we are on the draw. Our opponent has taken a mulligan, and our hand is once again clunky. We have this Field of Ruin still kind of messing up our access to early colors. The good news here, though, is we have a lot of things that cost one colorless and that can be played on turn 2. So that's all well and good. We don't have access to turn 1 Inquisition either because of this Quagmire, so our utility lands are looking pretty clunky here. So as things stand, if we don't draw another land, we have to play a Quagmire on turn 1, and then we have the awkward decision of do we run out of threat or do we put off our Inquisition yet again. If we don't draw some lands, this hand could get really clunky really fast, and clunky means weak in this context, because a lot of our stuff wants to be played aggressively on curve here. Like, we want to Inquisition right away to grow the Goyf. We want to get the Goyf down right away outside of bolt range and just start cracking in with it. So, definitely an awkward hand, but not one that I feel is a justifiable mulligan. We just really need to hit a couple land drops, and then everything should be okay. Our opponent's happy at 6. They have scryed to the top, and they will lead as they did in Game 1 on a Serum Visions. Alright, we did it. We found a land, so once again here we have to fetch and shock, which is not ideal, but let's see what we're dealing with here. So we have, wow, alright. Lightning Bolt and Snapcaster are our two main takes. Now, right now, they have Island Swamp, so they can't cast the Bolt. Snapcaster is almost always a better take anyway, so we're probably going to take it. But let's take a look at the rest of their hand. They have Pia and Kira Nalar. This is a, nice value-y card for grindy, fair matchups like this one, but they need to find 2 red lands before they can cast it. And even so, it's not the scariest threat in the world. It's just like a nice value play. Now, what the heck is this card? This is a Rise and Fall. Okay? So this is not a fuse card. They can only cast one or the other. So if they cast Rise, they're going to return target creature card from a graveyard and target creature on the battlefield to their owner's hand. So that's kind of a sorcery speed, raise dead and unsummon on the same card. That's pretty cool. And then Fall, target player reveals 2 cards at random from their hand and then discards each non-land card revealed this way. Wow, that's potentially powerful as well. So I kind of like that. That card's pretty sweet. So if we take Snapcaster, we allow them to buy it back with Rise. But if they spend next turn going Swamp, Rise to return the Snapcaster, that's pretty fine with me. It's just kind of an even trade all around, right? So I still think that's the correct take with them off of red. We don't care about lightning bolts anyway. We're going to play our Tarmogoyfs first. It's already outside of bolt range, even though we don't have an instant in the yard yet. So our opponent, they found a Collective Brutality, which probably seems like a better play to them than casting that Rise, which, as I identified, is a little underwhelming right there. But they whiff here. They go for the discard mode, and we just have a handful of lands and creatures. Pretty unlucky for our opponent. And then, of course, we immediately draw a card that could have been taken, so lucky for us. So we're going to run out the Goyf here. This, of course, lets them get their kind of 2-for-1, their Unsummon and Raise Dead put together if they're going to, cast Rise. Again, that is fine with us. It's not the end of the world. It's just kind of like they buy back the Snap, they get a tempo play. It's better than them playing like a Liliana the Last Hope here or something, potentially, right? But, yep, they find a mountain, so they're ready to start doing red things as well, and then they will indeed cast Rise, get their Snap back, bounce our Goyf. Sure. Alright, another Tireless Tracker is looking very unnecessary here. We've got all the threats in the world. We certainly need lands, and of course we need lands to make even the first tracker worthwhile, much less the second one. And Goyf is now down to a 2-3 as well because they got the creature out of the yard, but Bolt is still something that cannot kill it because putting an instant in the yard will make our Goyf a 3-4, a little bit too big to handle. So another threat, again, it's just very clunky. This is Clunk City over here. Once again, kind of clunky on both sides, right? I guess we just play another Tarmogoyf. You know, if they have, like, Anger of the Gods, that would be very bad, but can they really have Anger of the Gods in a deck with Pia and Kieran, with all those, you know, Snapcasters, Lavamancers, Jace Vryn's Prodigy? I don't really think so, but I guess that would be pretty bad if they did. They would need to have another red source as well for that, which it looks like they have. Okay. No Anger. No Anger, it's just the P and K. Sure. Alright, so we had a window to Fatal Push a token there, but we've got a better play. Still no land, so that's pretty awkward. But we at least get to make our own lands here with the Field of Ruin. We're going to take them off of their dual land, so no more double red for them. They, of course, had to go get a blue because they need 3 blue to do cryptic command things. And here, so there was an argument for attacking and hoping they assign some, you know, double or triple blocks or whatever, then blowing them out with a Fatal Push. I don't know that they would anyway. I would not expect them to. And I don't want to get blown out by, like, a random Spell Pierce. Like, you know, as unlikely as that is, these Grixis decks, they kind of play a little bit of everything. So I'm just playing it really, you know, I'm just making sure this resolves. Okay, so life is good. We got the P and K. Our Goyfs are now gigantic 4/5s. So who needs to continue making land drops and play out threats when you already have the best threat in Modern on the field as a 2-of? They're just going to take it. Interesting. So they've got Lightning Bolt, so they're representing, I guess, double block on a Goyf and bolt it. So that's a thing. We draw a Verdant Catacombs. So here we could go Tracker into Fetch Land into Inquisition, and that would be fine. But I kind of want to lead on the Inquisition because I don't really need to play the Tracker at all yet. I can just maybe even play another Tarmogoyf after I clear the way, or maybe Scavenging Ooze makes sense, or something. So as good as that would be, I don't mind the Inquisition here. Alright, they're going to Fatal Push in response. Now we know they have a Snapcaster in hand as well. It's very fortunate that they don't have double black, because then they could Snap Push our other Goyf, and that would be so good for them. But because they don't have double black, they're going to Lightning Bolt our Goyf in response as well. Okay. And then they're just going to flash in the Snapcaster for no value. Well, this is clearly them just emptying their hand, so we cannot take anything with the Inquisition. And we see a Cryptic Command. Yep, fair enough. So, no take there. They still don't have the, They still don't have the mana for Cryptic quite yet. And they just bolted the Goyf instead of our face there because they are the ones on the ropes, so this actually walls off our Tarmogoyf from attacking this turn unless we want to trade it with the Snapcaster, which we do not, so that was a heads-up play from the opponent. But you know what? Like I said, I'm probably interested in just playing out another Goyf. We don't need the trackers to take over the game here in this type of situation. We're just going to Tarmogoyf our way to victory here. At least that is the plan. Alright, so they did it. They found a third blue source, so Cryptic Command is live. Knowing that there's realistically nothing they're going to do besides Cryptic to tap and draw next turn, our opponent will get in with the Thopters. Sure. I'll leave that fetch land uncorrect in case Tracker becomes relevant. We found a Duress. Alright, so what happens if I Duress them? Well, they're going to tap down my team and probably just draw a card and hope it's something I cannot Duress. So I guess we will move to attacks. Force them to Cryptic us now. Yep. So they'll draw a card. Cool. So now it's going to be Tireless Tracker time. Now it's fine to play this out. Play the Tracker. Crack this, get a clue. We're still just respecting our life total, so we could have shocked there to make our green mana better for the Scavenging Ooze, but yeah, I'm just respecting the life total. We Duress and see a Grim Lavamancer. Okay, so we cannot take that, and we just have to pass. Lava Man is a good card in some windows, but not something I fear at all right now. It's summoning sick, he's choked on red mana, etc., etc. And it's just, along with the rest of their board, an X1, and we just drew Liliana the Last Hope, as if our board wasn't outsizing them enough. She is going to just kill things for fun. So, yeah, I guess the play to make here is, again, just to move to attacks. If they have the Cryptic Command once more, they'll be forced to fire it off here, but it does not look like they do. So I don't know what the worst thing that could happen is here. Maybe a Fatal Push would be pretty bad, I guess, on my Tarmogoyfs, but doesn't look like that's going to happen. So they're going to chump a Goyf, and they're going to double block the tracker, and they have to block like that, so even if we crack a clue, they can still kill it. So, sure, I didn't care too much about this tracker anyway. I'm very happy to trade it for 2 pieces on the board at this stage of the game. It has already gotten me 1 clue. And of course the chump block is there, and we get in for 4 with the other Goyf. And now we get to see if this Liliana resolves. They could have like a Logic Knot in hand or something, but they don't. So we get to just cleanly kill that Lavamancer. Feels pretty good. And our opponent has 1 in hand. They'll take their draw step, and they will scoop it up. All right. So we got choked on mana for a while. On turn 9, we still only had 4 lands. Didn't really matter because we had a couple pieces of decent interaction. You know, that Inquisition was decent, and the Fatal Push, and then the other Inquisition whiffed, and the Duress whiffed. So actually, so the first Inquisition took a Snapcaster, which they eventually bought back. Our Fatal Push killed a Pia in Kiran Nalaar, which was really nice because it got our Tarmogoyfs bigger, but otherwise that card was not that threatening to us. And then our other 2 pieces of discard both whiffed. So I was going to say our interaction did a decent amount of work in getting us there, but not really. It was our Inquisition kind of got reversed. They kind of walked back what we did with our first Inquisition. Our Fatal Push was pretty good, but then our other 2 pieces of interaction were both blanks. So this was a match that was literally won by just repeatedly hitting them in the face with Tarmogoyfs. And of course, Tireless Tracker was nice. It got a clue. It provided another body that they were incentivized to trade a couple things with, so that was fine. And Liliana the Last Hope helped put a little flourish on the end, add a little style to the kill. And of course, she would have been a big problem for them going forward if they had somehow managed to stabilize from here. But really, this match was just won by the good old Tarmogoat. Definitely the MVP here, no question about it. And I'll tell you, when your control deck doesn't have access to white, granted they have Fatal Push, which lines up well against Tarmogoyfs, but not so easy to always kill a Tireless Tracker with a Fatal Push. And, of course, that doesn't kill Taziger at all. So they had to bring in the pushes, and 1 push did answer a Tarmogoyf, so they're not without efficient answers to it, but they still just struggled to remove these things. The red stuff does not look good against Tarmogoyfs, not at all. Especially the more grindy, permanent based value plays that red brings to their Grixis deck, like P and K Grim Lavamancer. Jeskai decks are just basically slinging bolts and helixes and electrolyzes around and stuff, and those can sometimes be a little bit better against Tarmogoyf, or they can just try to delay the Tarmogoyf beats and go upstairs with that stuff. But with the way the Grixis deck is set up, our opponent has no choice but to try to match threat with answer and answer with threat, and our Tarmogoyfs just lined up a little bit too well against a lot of what they had going on. So we had clunky progressions both games. In game 1, we used tireless tracker to bridge us from the clunky early and mid game into a smooth and dominant late game. And here in game 2, we never really got the tracker game rolling to its full capacity, and we didn't need to because we just shoved a couple Tarmogoyfs down their throat, and that was pretty much all it took. So anyway, well played by the opponent. It was a good game, and definitely an interesting change of pace to face Grixis as opposed to a blue-white X control deck, that is for sure. And again, you know, the deck's got just a huge collection of powerful cards. It does have some potential, but yeah, it ends up seeming like the Sultai stuff where the performance never quite lives up to the admittedly sky-high potential. It's still a very solid deck, very reasonable deck, and probably one that has not fully been solved, so keep your eye out for that. But regardless, it was a fun match, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. As always, thank you for your support, and thank you for your views, and stay tuned to the channel. I've always got more gameplay coming down the pipe, so I will see you for the next video, and I hope you have a great night.